Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Girivardhari Gopi Jana Balabha Girivardhari Jasodanandana Brajanaranjana Jasodanandana Brajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parividagacharya Astatarasatasi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 24 from Canto 9, Chapter 4. Svargona prartito yasya Manujayar amara priyaha Shrinvadbhir upagayadbhir Uttama shloka cheshtatam Svargona prartito yasya Manujayar amara priyaha Shrinvadbhir upagayadbhir Uttama shloka cheshtatam. Svargana Pratito Yasya Jai Amarapriya Uttama Shloka Cheshtitam. Ladies. Svargana Pratito Yasya Manujayar Amarapriya Shindradbhir Upagayadbhir Svargana Pratito Yasya Manujayar Amarapriya Shrinvadbhir Upagayadbhir Uttama Shloka Cheshtitam Svargana Pratito Yasya Manujayar Amarapriya Shrinvadbhir Upagayadbhir Uttama Shloka Cheshtitam Svargaha. Life in the heavenly planets. Not Pratitaha. A subject for aspiration. Yasya. Of whom? Ambarish Maharaj. Manujai. By the citizens. Amara Priyaha. Very dear even to the demigods. Shrinvadbihi. Who were accustomed to hear. Upagayadbihi. And accustomed to chant. Uttama Shloka. Of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Cheshtitam. About the glorious activities. And the previous verse has no purports. I'm going to read 23, 24, then purport. 23. In the sacrifice arranged by Maharaj Ambarish, the members of the assembly and the priests, parentheses, especially Hota, Udgata, Brahma, and Advaryu, were gorgeously dressed, and they all looked exactly like demigods. They eagerly saw to the proper performance of the yajna. 24. The citizens of the state of Maharaj Ambarish were accustomed to chanting and hearing about the glorious activities of the personality of Godhead. Thus they never aspired to be elevated to the heavenly planets, which are extremely dear to even to the demigods. Purport. A pure devotee who has been trained in the practice of chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord and his famed qualities, form, paraphernalia, and so on, is never interested in elevation to the heavenly planets, even though such places are extremely dear even to the demigods. Narayana para sarve nakutaschana bibhyati svargapavarga narakeshu apitulyarta darshana. Translation. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, never fear any condition of life. The heavenly planets, liberation, and hellish planets are all the same to a devotee. Bhagavatam 6:17-28. A devotee is always situated in the spiritual world. Therefore, he does not desire anything. He is known as akama, or desireless. because he has nothing to desire except to render transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Maharaj Ambarish was a most exalted devotee of the Lord. He trained his subjects in such a way that the citizens of his state were not interested in anything material, including even the happiness of the heavenly planets. Pretty big. Not just the king, but the citizens of the king. That's big. It's a different yuga. In any case, there's many points. Go back a little bit. Maharaj Ambarish is a Shuddha Bhakta. And going back to texts 18 through 20, very famous Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayo verse that Prabhupada loved to quote again and again, just even that first line, Savaimana Krishna Padara Vindayo, and then he would say the next line sometimes, Vachangsi Vaikuntha Gunana Varnane. His life was, he was a Krishna Bhakta. He had a deity of Krishna, he worshipped his deity of Krishna in grand and fully dedicated manner every day. Although he was king of the world went on while he was engaged in his worship of his deity of Krishna. So he's a special, top standard, Uttama Adhikari Bhakta, topmost condition. And he was a king, so he had pure devotion, and he had the duties of a king, so he executed the duties of king in pure devotion. In a varnashram-oriented way. In a varnashram-oriented way means he saw to the needs of the citizens according to the codes of the Vedas. So apparently, not all the citizens from there was a drought in his kingdom. And he's the king, so he took responsibility for the drought. And in his kingdom, there were brahmanas that knew the Vedic yajna procedures to bring rain. Now, there are brahmanas that aren't pure devotees of Krishna. There are brahmanas that know the Vedic process. They know how to perform yajnas, and their primary focus is not on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but propitiating various devas for different purposes, and they know the yajnas to do that. And the qualified brahmanas could do that. They could bring the desired result of some necessity of life through the medium of propitiating the devas in a proper way. They knew the mantras and the procedures, how to, and they were effective. So in one sense, the fact that Ambarish Maharaj called upon the brahmanas to perform a yajna to bring rain, on the one hand, why do that? He could just worship the deity of Krishna and have all the assembled personalities worship the deity of Krishna. Because from Bhagavad Gita, what is the necessity of propitiating devas? To get necessities of life, because their ability to provide those necessities of life comes from the one who supplies everything, from Krishna. So just worship Krishna. That's our principal teaching. Just worship Krishna. Just worship Krishna. Just worship Krishna. We don't need to worship anyone else. You pour water on the root of the tree and all the leaves and branches and parts of the tree get water, so just water the root of the tree. And similarly, Vishnu is the root of all existence, just worship Vishnu. These other Karmakanda section of the Vedas rituals, we're not obliged to perform because we water the root of the tree. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, whatever you need and whatever you have, I'll provide and I'll preserve. Just worship me. Very clear in Bhagavad Gita. And it's not like Maharaj Ambarish doesn't know the conclusion of the message of Bhagavad Gita that just worship Krishna. He just worshiped Krishna. But over here, there's a drought, and he's engaging the Brahmanas according to their dharmic capacity, and the citizens who are affected by the drought to neutralize the drought by Vedic Yajna. Mentioned in text 23 is for yajnas, there are these 4 divisions of brahmanas, which we don't know much about because we don't do those. But there are Vaishnavas that know those. Just one direct experience I had is when the Goswamis of Vrindavan installed Krishna Balaram and Radhashama Sundar and Gaura-Nitai. Right in the middle of the temple room floor, they set up a yajna. And they had the 4 different brahmanas that knew the procedures for installing Radha and Krishna Balaram and Gaura-Nitai. Took 3 days. And they had the 4 different priests. So Vaishnava mantras and tantras, or procedures and rituals, can be also invoked. We're not told here what are the procedures and what are the mantras that are used, but here's this Uttama Adhikari Vaishnav, Maharaj Ambarish, engaging the Brahmanas and everybody in rituals, yajnas. It's important, as Prabhupada makes mention, that at the very beginning of every Vedic yajna, even for those who are worshippers of devas and not Vaishnavas, the very first mantra indicates the bhokta of the yajna. The bhokta of the yajna is Vishnu. So, different mantras. Anecdotal. One time, many years ago, I was invited to a Hindu temple in Nashville because they were doing something or other. And a priest was going to perform a yajna. I wasn't interested. They said it'll help the preaching because they want you to speak something. So I went. And I think Jayananda would be particularly interested in hearing this. The priest that did the yajna was formerly from Udupi, trained by Madhvacharya, Dvaitavad. And he did this Vedic yajna that the first mantra he chanted was a nice one, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I was very familiar with that one. And then he went on to all the other ones, and I got, it took a long time, so I just kind of got up and chanted japa, went outside and chanted till the thing was over. Then I asked this priest, "You're trained by Madhvacharya. Why are you doing this?" And, I'm maintaining my family. And there's more. He said, the main financial sponsor of this is a cattle rancher. The whole Hindu temple is built by the money of a cattle rancher. Do you feel any conflict in being the priest for a place like that. I'm maintaining my family. There's a teaching that, anyway, the first mantra of any karma kanda ritual, ultimately the aim is Vishnu, even for the karma kanda rituals. So we should know that. And at least that's my understanding. I'm not at all knowledgeable in these matters. Jayanada can correct me if I've got it wrong. But the bhakti of the yajna is invoked first. So Maharaj Ambarisha is engaging these four types of brahmanas in a yajna to stop the drought, to bring rain. Now our procedure could be like what he's doing. However, our procedure, Prabhupada often spoke about a long-standing drought in Andhra Pradesh, many years drought, no rain. That's terrible. So, crop production, what to speak of, just everything that you need water for. And so Prabhupada requested the devotees go and perform public Harinam, and it rained. The newspapers declare Hare Krishnas bring the rain from chanting Hare Krishna, which is similar to what it says in Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada often would speak about it thereafter. Yajna brings rain, but the purpose of yajna is satisfy Vishnu. So, the citizens took part, but in many cases, primarily, karmakanda is provided for those that don't have sufficient faith and simply worship Krishna. There's propitiate the devas, recognizing, yes, Vishnu is the source of the power of the devas, but they propitiate the devas. Primarily their faith is in the devas can provide their needs, not Krishna's behind them, giving them that ability. That's not the primary faith. But the citizens of Maharaj Ambarish had that faith. So they're participating in a yajna that their king is arranging with that faith. And so in addition to the karmakanda, in addition to the ritual that provides the necessities of life, there's elevation to heaven. Prosperity in this life, dharma, artha, kama. We'll think about moksha later. Dharma, artha, and this as aspiration for the heavenly planets. That's the Vedic model, and religions of the world have different procedures, but it's the same principle. Follow codes of religion, so that so you'll gain pious credit, so that you'll be entitled to prosper in this life, the fruits of piety, and after this life go to heaven. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, most people think that's what the purpose of Scripture is for. And it's true. Do a survey. I've done it. That's what most people think. But the citizens, not only Maharaj Ambarish, but the citizens were trained differently, specifically. And the training, in the verse that we just read, it was that they were accustomed. The citizens of the state of Maharaj Ambarish were accustomed to chanting and hearing about the glorious activities of the personality of Godhead. Shrinvadbihi, the third line. Shrinvadbihi, they were accustomed, Shrinva, to hear, and they were accustomed to chant, upagayadvir, hearing and chanting. That's the training that we've received from our founder Acharya, because that's the method of the Bhagavatam. It's Bhagavad Dharma. We're given Bhagavad Dharma, hearing and chanting about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Becoming accustomed to that, other desires become mitigated and eventually disappear. Shinvataso Katka Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Ridyan Taksto Yabadrani Vidunoti Saritsatam Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seva. Nityam, regularly. Nityam literally means eternally, but regularly. How important is it for followers of Srila Prabhupada and our disciplic succession and followers of Rupa Goswami and Lord Chaitanya? How important is it to regularly hear Shrinvadbir Upagayadvir, to become accustomed to regularly, daily? How important is it? It's maximum important, because it's the means for purification, means for awakening not only a notion that the goal is to reach Krishna, but a condition of heart that's our aspiration when we're doing whatever we do in life, in our day-to-day life. According to Varna and Ashram, there's different activities suited for the different Varna and Ashram. But all those activities, when Shrinvadbihir, Upagayadbihir is, we become accustomed to hearing and chanting Bhagavad Dharma, Uttama Shloka Cheshtitam, the glorious activities and qualities and pastimes and form and so forth of the Supreme Lord, by that hearing process of that subject matter, other desires dissolve. Other desires are mitigated. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu, almost to nil, and then eventually to nil. And if we don't regularly, in a qualitative manner, participate in and become accustomed to hearing and chanting, it's not going to happen. I mean, it's wishful thinking that it will happen, but it's not going to happen. And therefore one's aspiration will be, down a notch or two or three, which is piety, to prosper in this life and go to heaven. Be a good person and prosper in this life and go to heaven and enjoy heavenly pleasure for a long time. Krishna's teaching in Bhagavad Gita is very clear. Arjuna, don't aspire like that. Abrahma bhuvana loka punar arvartanarjuna. Because even in those planets, even higher than those planets, up to Brahmaloka, birth and death are taking place, and that's not what you should aspire for. Enjoying in the cycle of birth and death. That's not what you should aspire for. What should you aspire for? Well, if you take that away, then what's left? Panic. Or impersonalism. Just like the message in the purport is, these citizens of Maharaj Ambarish were akama bhaktas. They had no material desire. But supposing you're not a bhakta, supposing you want to be a spiritual person, but you haven't had association of devotees, and so you want to be a spiritual person, what do? You become a Buddhist and try to become desireless. Because, I was sharing this yesterday with the home program, but recently on a flight, one of my many flights, the stewardess came and spoke with me. It's nice to travel in a dhoti and shaved head and tilak, and people ask questions sometimes, even just, you don't enter into their space, they just ask. So she asked, this is kind of the standard introductory questions, and then it got into, when I was 12 years old, my cousin's sister was a Buddhist. She was 17. And I became really inspired by her quality. And from that age of 12, I became a vegan. And I have no regret, no thoughts of turning back. I'm really happy. But I don't understand the teachings. Could you explain what your teachings are? How is it similar to Buddhism? One of those. So this is quick. It was a long discussion, but there were many points of similarity. Karma. Buddhists accept this notion of karma. She said, yes, I've heard of karma. And reincarnation. Buddhists accept reincarnation. That's also our teaching. Our teachings are Bhagavad Gita. Have you heard that? No. So, a big difference, there's lots of similarity. Buddha was born in India, or appeared in India, and his coming was predicted by this vast body of the Vedas. Oh, I didn't know that. He's an incarnation of Krishna, yes. But Buddha's teaching was different. In what way? Buddha's teaching is everything comes from nothing. Then she said, well, isn't it that Buddha teaches the root of suffering is desire? I said, exactly, that's his teaching. So his idea is become free from desire, you stop your suffering. And then what's left if you're free from desire, along with you stop suffering, what's left? Nothing. Nothingness. You enter into nothingness because you've ended the somethingness. And all you're left with is nothingness. I said, but so a big difference in Bhagavad Gita is not that suffering comes from desire. Suffering comes from ignorance. And from ignorance comes ignorant desire. From ignorant desire comes ignorant activity that brings suffering. The root of suffering is ignorance. And the essence, the original ignorance is ignoring Krishna. That's the problem. So, and therefore, the source of everything is not nothingness. The source of everything is Krishna. And this place of suffering is for those who have ignored Krishna, and then they have varieties of ignorance. So many ignorances that needs to be eradicated with knowledge. And that's what Bhagavad Gita is. It's transcendental knowledge about the source of everything and how to restore that relationship. She said, this is very interesting. So I'm sending her a copy for her and her cousin, sister, Bhagavad Gita. Let's see what happens. Having a conversation is one thing and following up is another thing. But I'm just speaking now back to the text. What is, the citizens were akama bhaktas. And Prabhupada is very clear. Desire less, akama, it means not kama. What's kama? Kama is material desire. But they have a desire. Akama bhaktas have a desire to serve Krishna. And therefore, akama means they don't have a desire for fruits of piety, prospering in this life to enjoy the fruits of piety and going to heaven after this life. Although that heaven region, the verse says specifically, is very much coveted by even the demigods. So the citizens of Maharaj Ambrish were spiritually more advanced than the demigods, although they're in this world. It says specifically, in this world, they're actually in the spiritual world. They're Vaikuntha-vasis, although they're walking around. And then a last thing. Last thing is the reference, well, it's from the verse, Svargana. They're not interested in becoming residents of the heavenly planets or all the fruits of enjoying in the heavenly planets. So Prabhupada refers to a verse from Canto 6 that's spoken by Lord Shiva to Parvati about another king, Chitraketu. Chitraketu was on the topmost, like Ambarish, topmost level of devotion. He was so topmost that he had a relationship of friendship with Lord Shiva. He wasn't a worshiper of Lord Shiva, he was a peer, spiritual peer. Of course, Lord Shiva is exalted in all ways, but spiritually a peer. Parvati didn't understand that. She thought King Chitraketu was disrespecting Lord Shiva, so she cursed him. You become a demon for offending Lord Shiva. And his mind was unmoved. Think back on text 20, Savai Manak Krishna Padara Vindayo. So like Maharaj Ambarish, King Chitraketu, his mind was fixed on Krishna. So when Parvati cursed him to become a demon, he didn't panic. He didn't try to ask her to take it back, please neutralize this curse or anything. This is somehow the providential will, and I accept. But please know, I meant no offense to your good husband, Lord Shiva. And he became a demon. So then Lord Shiva spoke this verse to Parvati, saying, just see, you have accused King Chitraketu of being an offender, but it's you're who the offender, because he's so exalted. You didn't understand his position of exaltedness, and so you cursed him. But just see by his conduct. And so that's where the context of this verse, Svarga, Apavarga, Narakeshu, Apitulyarta Darshanam. Svarga, heaven. Apavarga, liberation. Narakeshu, hell. Heaven, liberation, hell, Apitulyarta Darshanam. He sees them the same. How is that? Because he's fixed in his position with Lord Narayana. Narayana paraksarge nakutaschana bibyati. He has no fear, and he has no hankering and no lamentation. There's nothing going on. Nothing material can affect such a person, hankering for or lamenting or fearing. Now, remarkable, as Lord Shiva is speaking about King Chitraketu, Prabhupada is saying in this verse, and the verses in the purport of this verse, and the verse is saying, the citizens of Maharaj Ambarish were on that same platform. That's a big wow. They didn't hanker for anything or lament anything. Why? And how did that happen? They were accustomed to this. Shrinvad bir upagayad bir utabashloka cheshtam. So we're being trained in the same way. At least we're given the opportunity. We can, say yes or no, or externally say yes and internally kind of be out to lunch. Not fully absorbed in the gift that's being given to us. The gift that's being given to us is to dissolve material existence, like an advertisement. Do. Stronger than dirt. It has the power. Bhakti has the power to take us out of material existence. And the evidence, one evidence, is the citizens of Maharaj Ambarish, because of their king, they were accustomed to Shrinvadvir, Upagayadvir, Uttamashloka Cheshtatam, Swargana. When they engaged in these rituals and yagyas, they weren't hoping, I'll get some piety. Then I can prosper in this life and go to the heavenly regions in the next life, which is, by and large, the aspiration of those who are pious. Universal, not just, within the context of Vedic culture. That's the paradigm. Bhagavad Gita's message and the Bhagavatam's message is way above that, way above that. And it takes regular hearing to elevate our consciousness to go beyond the affinity for the temporary and finding a situation within this world that's comfy. It's not this world. It's a foolish aspiration. There's no water in the desert, there's no happiness in the material world. There's a life where one can live one's life fully in service to the Supreme Lord. That's what we're being given. And in this life, exactly as it says in the purport, in the spiritual world. And after this life, spiritual world. It's amazing. It's literally amazing. But that's the gift that's being given. For those that accept it, it's yours. Now there's something you have to do besides say thank you. There's a little more we have to do. Take up the practice, understand how the practice works, give our heart to the purpose behind the practice, that's taking shelter in loving service, whatever, whether it's deity worship or cleansing the temple or whatever you do. You go in Sankirtan or sit and listen to class. The qualitative way in which we participate in all these things, the sankalpa, the intention, that's also going to be refined as we progress in Krishna consciousness. Whatever intention we have in day one, and 2 years later, and 5 years later, and 20 years later, and 30 years later, is likely to evolve if we're doing the process, taking up the process properly. But that's the gift. It's a miraculous gift. It's the best. Okay, so any discussion?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I was just thinking on the expertise that is required following the example of Maharaj Ambarish, and also you mentioned Srila Prabhupada when he engaged the Goswami Brahmanas in Vrindavan to engage people with their different propensities in glorifying Krishna in some way. You know, I think right here the engagement was of all the citizens, including the Brahmanas, in performance of Yajna for the pleasure of Krishna. It requires that expertise actually to be able to do it, to be able to do it properly, because although, you know, in our position of being engaged in the service of, you know, bringing Krishna consciousness to others, sometimes you find yourself in that position that it could be trying to find that balance of being able to encourage people to do as they want to do, but at the same time to connect them to the service or the process of Krishna consciousness, so that it doesn't get watered down. So, in your experience, you know, on engaging people, what type of things can you tell us to keep in mind?
The last part of your sentence trailed off. Could you say the last part again, not the whole thing?
Yeah, and in this, your experience as a you know, a spiritual guide and guru and teacher, what type of things can you tell us to keep in mind when we engage in others that comes, you know, with a particular desire or particular propensity to engage them in the service of Krishna, in the service of the temple, the deities, like that?
I'll give an answer, but I want to put Jayananda on alert that I'm going to ask you to speak something about this topic. I mean, not his question, but the topic. So, First and foremost is to try to understand the faith and nourish the faith. This is Hari Bhakti Vilas. At least I haven't read this passage, but I've been told it's part of the instruction of Sanatana Goswami that someone who is guiding others must understand the faith of the person and encourage according to the faith of the person, without, of course, compromising principle, but according to the faith of the person. We encourage according to the faith of the person, following the Vedic process. The converse, we don't disturb the faith of the person. Now, an expert, Srila Prabhupada would sometimes challenge, but he was expert. We can't imitate, but some persons imitate, and it's not recommended. But see the faith and nourish the faith towards the goal. And one of the main things that helps one reach the goal is Bhaktivedanta purports and the process of Harinam. Not just the process of Harinam, because there are lots of people out there that chant with another idea altogether, the idea of becoming one. They chant with that idea, because that's the notion that they've been fed as they started their spiritual inquiry. Become one with the Supreme. Chant Hare Krishna helps you become one with the Supreme. I'm chanting Hare Krishna to become one, to become Krishna. We don't nourish that faith. We recognize what the faith is, and according to the position of faith, we try to direct that faith towards the conclusion in a proper manner. I'd say that's the most outstanding thing. And according to propensity, we like to engage someone's propensity in some service. Of course, within boundaries, so they don't, unintentionally do something foolish that's detrimental to the sangha of devotees, or themselves, or the external world. So, take some discrimination, how to encourage propensity in that way. So it's faith and seeing propensity, and trying to connect those persons with Bhagavad Dharma, the essence of purification, according to their capacity and their wherever they are in their spiritual trajectory. That should be the intention, at least from your side or our side, when encountering different people from different backgrounds and persuasions. We don't need to change their culture if their culture is not inconsistent. If their culture is consistent, we don't need to change that culture. For example, respecting elders, or the mode of dress, or the favorite types of food for persons of different culture. Italians like pizza and pasta. They don't have to give up pizza and pasta and offer only dal, sabji, rice, and puris. Etc. There has to be within a certain parameter, but we don't need to change culture. We just need recalibrate the direction towards the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead, and primarily by hearing and chanting means. And the relationships that we establish with those people where some trust, and then we can speak things because there's trust that can help them go a doable step in the direction of Krishna, according to their personality and their culture and their way of life. The unity in diversity principle, in other words. Those are some thoughts. China.
I was just reflecting how Krishna is the supreme salesperson. And, we're talking about, Maharaj is talking about propensity and also finding out what the particular interests or inclinations are of those we come in contact with. And so we see how Krishna does that with the body of Vedic literatures and the Vedangas. There's things for the Karmakandas, there's things for the Bhaktas. So in one shape, form, or another, Krishna is supplying according to one's interests, and ultimately can, with the understanding, whether they know it or not, ultimately it'll get them closer to the goal. So similarly, we also should catch on and understand someone's interests. It's sales 101, actually. For any of you who have had a sales background, I've had some in the past. You don't want to be hammering in on some aspect that may not be of much interest to somebody, but when you determine and you find out and they share what interests are, then you're able to give a presentation that speaks particularly to that, and that will be attractive.
What I was hoping to have you speak about is Maharaj Ambarish turning to yagyas to propitiate the devas to make it rain. And the four divisions of brahmanas dressed like demigods and, bringing awe and veneration to the participants. Oh, not only know the mantras, look at how elegant. But those citizens having no interest in heavenly residence anyway. And the position of yagya within our Bhagavad Dharma. It seems to me it's a big part of it is propensity. But propensity that has the goal that's clear.
Right.
So that's what I was hoping you would comment on.
I'll try Maharaj to some extent. As we know, deity worship was the Yuga Dharma in the prior Yuga, and then yagya prior to that even. And we can even see today how it can be very attractive and very inspiring, interesting when we see those who are familiar with different aspects of ritual. But also we'll sometimes look around. I sometimes check around and see, and many of us need to understand. I think most of us do, but I see some very elevated devotees around who, okay, this is nice, but I definitely get this understanding, this mood that, chanting the holy name is the primary, it's the Yuga Dharma. All these rituals, okay, provided it establishes and it encourages smartavya satatam Vishnu or Vishmartavya, always remembering Krishna, never forgetting Krishna, then good, fine. But all these rituals and things, unless they're done with the proper mood and all, it's of limited value. So you have these different brahmanas and the yagyas. You have the Udgatri, who's the primary brahmana who's chanting all the shlokas. You have the Hotri, who's offering the different, the oblations, the offerings. You have the Brahma who kind of oversees everything that's going on. There's one more. Advaryu? There's one more there. I don't remember.
Udgata? Did you mention?
Udgatri I mentioned, is the one who's chanting.
Hota, Udgata, Brahma, and Advaryo.
Advar, yes, that last one. So, it has its place, it has its purpose. But I encourage all of us as Krishna Bhaktas, while there is importance there and it shouldn't be minimized also, it's by no means the primary. We know that. So it plays its role in our society. It plays its role in our sadhana and our devotional service. But it should be understood that, whether it be deity worship and yagyas and all this, it's understood to be an auxiliary sadhana. And it can help nourish the primary of chanting the holy name.
Just to follow up on this is, the Bhagavatam, there are sections of the Bhagavatam that are very appealing to those who are Gyan-oriented. There's sections of the Bhagavatam that are apparently Karma-kanda-oriented. There's sections of the Bhagavatam that are addressing all the varieties of what's out there of propensity, and it brings it all to Krishna. Just an observation of how the Bhagavatam orchestrates. Now, some persons that aren't so Gyan-oriented are going to have a tough time with certain sections of the Bhagavatam. It's like, whew. We had a GBC meeting in Tirupati one time, and we were covering chapter 87, Prayers of Personified Vedas from Canto 10. And it was astrophysics. It was way up there. Very, very subtle and people that are Gyan-oriented, they love it. And people that aren't were tuned out. But it's in the Bhagavatam, and there's other sections. So similarly, persons that may say, well, where's the yagya emphasis? Some persons, lots of persons really like yagyas. I mean, they're alert like anything when there's a yagya going on. And when it comes to katha, they leave. They're they're classes of people that really like. So that's there in the Bhagavatam. And what's the purpose of it? It's very clear what the purpose of it is. For those who are familiar with the Srimad Bhagavatam, that's the purpose of it. It brings one to that position. So, Bhagavatam recognizes different propensities and nourishes those different propensities and takes those propensities to the lotus feet of Krishna. That's my comment. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. In terms of finding that balance of not taking away their faith and engaging them, in terms of kirtan, the process of kirtan is becoming very popular.
Yes.
And, Hari Kirtan for them is one aspect, but we see a lot of demigod kirtan.
Yes.
I'm talking with someone who's inviting us to do a kirtan program, and he mentioned also other mantras they like to chant. And in terms of kirtan for the demigods, Prabhupada, I was reading one purport where Prabhupada makes it very clear that's an offense, in the sense that Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, kirtan is meant for Supreme Lord and not for any demigod. So is what they are doing, that's an offense? I'm just trying to solidify that understanding, because if someone's faith is worshiping the demigods an offense, if they do it?
Well, offense can be unknowing or knowing, and the knowing is to put them on an equal level. So that could be a knowing or an unknowing. because many people don't have a clue. So it's unknowing. So unknowingly making some offense is less severe than knowingly making some offense.
If one does know, for example, Shiva, we see as a
Yeah.
Vaishnav. So if one were to offer a prayer to Shiva, that wouldn't be an offense for an
Well,
Vaishnava.
your question is not about if you're invited, should you do this? Your question, as far as I understand it, is those that do this, is that namaparad?
It's both questions are there.
Okay, well, we shouldn't do that because we know the difference. We know the difference. And you could say, well, you know, I'm not equating the name of Lord Shiva with the name of Krishna. I'm just, you know, singing Lord Shiva's name because there's a preamble that says Vaishnavanam Yatar Shambhu and so forth. You know, is the audience going to understand that? You know, in one ear and out the other ear. They're not even going to nod yes. It's just in one ear and out the other ear because there's nothing inside. Now, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. In discussions with Badrinarayan Swami, again, I'm looking at Jayananda, Dharma Setu Prabhu, San Diego Dharma Setu Prabhu Brahmana, he maintains his family by performance of yagyas of different kinds for different people. And he does, on Shivaratri, etc., some yagyas. He does it in such a way the audience doesn't feel disturbed, and he doesn't compromise at all about what he's doing and why he's doing what he's doing. It's, you know, the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's clear. We're honoring Lord Shiva because, and it's the beginning, and the middle, and the end. So honoring of Lord Shiva in that way, when the person is very, very, very quadruple, very expert, it's not an offense for my understanding, for Dharmasetu to do what he does. He's helping people make the transition from pantheism to monotheism. We take shelter of Lord Vishnu because, and we honor Lord Shiva because he's the best of all worshippers of Vishnu. And it's, you know, the mood is right, the instruction is right, and he's the intention is right. He's helping them not just so he can maintain his family, he's helping persons come to the position of Vishnu Bhakti. You know, whether they're going to go there or not is another thing, but he's helping them. So now, for you or us as devotees to do things like that, I mean, there are devotees that do things like that. And they have I've heard from some of them why they do like that. You know, they're out on a limb, to say the least. Now, is it Vaishnava Parad or Nama Parad? The intention is certainly not to put Vishnu and Shiva on the same platform, or Durga and Vishnu on the same platform. But there are persons in that same circuit that they're going to, that's what they're being, that's the, you know, the spoon-fed understanding that, and, you know, behind that is not only on the same level, but ultimately everything is Brahman. That's the prevalent notion. So now, if those that do that, or you that may be invited to do that, how are you going to handle such a circumstance? I know what I would do. I wouldn't go out on that limb. Say, you know, you have your people that can do those mantras. This is our brand. Our brand is different names. And we have many, many mantras that are different names. We can teach them different mantras on different names. They're really nice. They're really nice. They're really nice. I'll show you. And that's what I would do. Stay with our brand. That would be my advice to you. And you can make, have recordings made so they can listen in advance. We have the songs, and they could, sing names of Vishnu. It's really nice. And I can explain, if they want to hear the explanation of some of the different names and why these names are important. And if you want, I can do that too. It's just stick with our brand. As our acharyas, predecessor acharyas have done. Stay at their lotus feet, follow their example and do that. That's would be my recommendation for you. And the others, the non-devotee kirtan singers that don't make any distinction, is that offense? I would say it's an offense. Perhaps, misguided, but it doesn't, unintentional murder is still murder.
But those who just do puja for the demigods, we see in India, many Indian people, they just directly do puja. That's in a kind of similar category of an offense?
Yeah. Now, go back to Dharma Setu. It's Shivaratri, and he does, but in his case, it's not offense. Beginning and middle and end. At least that's my understanding. I've discussed it with Badrinath Maharaj, who's examined very carefully what he's up to, and is, he says he's so gifted, he's so deeply devoted that he's figured out a way to take the audience to the feet of Krishna when he's observing Shivaratri. And they go with him because of his Krishna bhakti. Now, I don't know exactly what procedures he follows and so forth. But it's something akin to Mahaprabhu visiting temples of Lord Shiva and dancing in ecstasy. Was there offense on Mahaprabhu's part for coming before Lord Shiva and dancing in ecstasy? Certainly not. And so one has to be very qualified to do such things and have the right result, and not get the wrong result for oneself or for others. Yes.
Maharaj, one devotee had asked me
A devotee asked you?
a question. So she was sharing that deity worship is for the devotees who are very new to bhakti.
Sure it is. It's also for the Uttama Adhikari Vaishnavas and everybody in between.
Okay, so you answered my question, because she was saying that once a devotee has realized that Krishna is a person, then they don't have to do any deity worship. They just
They don't have
to chant.
but they do so spontaneously out of love. Look at our 6 Goswamis.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't say, I don't need deity worship anymore. And everybody in between. Is that all right?
Thank you.
Yes, Krishnarcha.
Romapada Swami, on that point of encouraging person's faith, I guess there's many persons that do adhere to demigod worship and the various sacrifices that go along with that worship. So many of those persons may be coming to ISKCON and looking to perform those particular sacrifices, and so they may approach the brahmanas of the temple and request certain sacrifices. So what is the, is there kind of a policy in ISKCON for how that is dealt with?
How to do what?
How to deal with persons with their faith in demigod worship and the particular sacrifices connected to that, and wishing to execute those sacrifices within an ISKCON temple.
Subal, can you help me? What's her question? I got like 50%, 60%, but are there instructions for persons that come to the temple and have those expectations? How to deal with those expectations? That's your question. Well, I'll say something and then I'll give the microphone to Jayananda and then we're going to end because of time. Yes, there's an ISKCON policy and formulated long ago that says in the temple room before the deities, those types of procedures are not to be followed. And if there's some other assembly area, there's some place where those procedures may be followed. And largely, to my knowledge and experience, ISKCON centers don't entertain those other activities, even they have another hall or facility for doing it. And the hall or facility for doing it, is my understanding, is where those that do that, they pay some money, they rent the space, their priests do it, we don't do it. And it's just space rental. It's not, we're participating in those functions. We don't promote those activities in our newsletter. There's a rah-rah something yagya going on over there and for Navaratri, and please come and attend the Navaratri festival that's in such and such hall. That's that's a maybe oversimplistic expression of what our ISKCON policy is and practices are. Jayananda?
Yes, Maharaj. So I'm looking at it right now. There is a guideline that's in the ISKCON law book. For those of you familiar, there is like a book full of different legislation, things that were voted on by the GBC body. So when it comes to worship of demigods, it's that they're being worshipped as Vaishnavas and not independently of Krishna. So I won't read the whole thing, but the first paragraph at least. Worship of demigods as independent gods is not permitted in Krishna consciousness. However, the nectar of devotion says that demigods should be respected. Worshipping demigods as Vaishnavas is authorized for preaching in order to teach people the right position of the demigods as great Vaishnavas. So this is the example, like with Dharmashetu Prabhu, he's implementing and having these aspects where there is some devata worship, but it's not independent worship per se. At least that's my understanding. So how does that work? How does that practically play out? Shivaratri. So there might be a murti of Shiva that is brought to the temple, but there's a discourse in letting everyone know and understand the proper tattva, the position of Shiva relative to Krishna or Vishnu and all that. And then when it comes to the practical worship, per this guideline, it's stated that the demigod would only get prasadam of Krishna. So items that are offered to Kishore Kishori, then they're offered to Shiva. Not that Shiva is independently worshipped like that.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.